Hey everybody, I want to make sure that we are comfortable integrating two sources together. What I've noticed is that on a lot of the papers, people will talk about their successful person and then they'll talk about Gladwell in one way or another, but they're not really tying everything together. So they might say, Gladwell says that you need to work 10,000 hours in order to be successful, and my famous person, you know, when they were a student, they were studying outside of their study hours, and then they got a job, and then they started their company, and that's their 10,000 hours. That's not really going to cut it. You need to have some proof or some evidence, and you also need to link everything back together very carefully. So I've written a paragraph here that we can just take a look at as an example, and I've chosen everybody's favorite, Arnold Schwarzenegger. So let's go take a look at just an example paragraph of how we might make this a little bit integrated in a way that we can really follow through. So let's read along together with me. In Outliers, Gladwell points out that an advantageous era of birth can be the difference between success and failure. Gladwell shows that there was a huge change in the American economy in the 1860s and 1870s, and in the history of the world, 20% of the richest people were born in the 1830s. In fact, he argues that, quote, it really matters how old you were when that transformation happened. End quote, Gladwell, 62. Gladwell goes on to emphasize, quote, their success was not just of their own making. It was a product of the world in which they grew up. End quote, 67. Arnold Schwarzenegger, while undoubtedly a hard worker, also benefited from being born in the right era. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, Hollywood started to transition to making bigger and bigger action movies with larger-than-life stars. Quote, I had mastered the world of bodybuilding by the time I got to my 30s, and Hollywood was looking for a new hero. John Milius gave me that chance when he approached me to star in Conan the Barbarian. End quote, Schwarzenegger, 103. Schwarzenegger had the perfect opportunity to be one of the few bodybuilders in the world who were ready to act when Hollywood's transformation occurred. Being in his mid-30s, he was the right age to play the role of a traveling barbarian with a troubled history. Schwarzenegger knew that his success wouldn't come completely of his own making, but he could see the future of movies and knew that he had a place there. Through his hard work and paying careful attention, he recognized that being the right age and having the right skills would put him in the perfect position to take advantage of the opportunities that were happening in this unique era. Now, let me show you why this works and why this is all weaved back into what Gladwell's saying. So I took a look at what Gladwell was arguing, and he was arguing, being the right age. So people who were born in the 30s were ready in the 1860s and 70s. And then here's the quote, it really matters how old you were when that transformation happened. Well, I wanted to look at this idea of the transformation because I'm trying to parallel that together with Schwarzenegger's success. So if I take the word transformation, I want this idea of a transformation to come back into my my argument that I'm making. So I'll scroll down, and as you can see, what I did is I wrote Schwarzenegger had the perfect opportunity to be one of the few bodybuilders in the world who was ready to act when Hollywood's transformation occurred. And again, I'm kind of continuing on with this same idea. I'm wanting to link the different thoughts. So Gladwell said here, their success was not just of their own making. And so we can take that, and I'm going to also write that back into Schwarzenegger's story, right? So I said Schwarzenegger knew that success wouldn't come completely of his own making, right? So I'm tying that idea back into it right there. And then it says it was a product of the world in which they grew up, but he could see the future of the movies and knew he had a place there. Through hard work and paying careful attention, he recognized that having the right skills put him in the perfect opportunity to take advantage of the opportunities that were happening in this unique era. So, this idea, while I'm not wording it exactly the same, I'm trying to show that being a product in the world in which they grew up is also the same thing as, being in the perfect position to take advantage of the opportunities. So I kind of matching up those two. So you can see that I'm tying ideas back together. This is kind of like weaving a red thread through a white sheet, and you can see it tying everything together and how it works for everything. I talked about all these different points. I made the argument that being in his 30s was important because that was the right age. If he was like a 20-year-old and trying to play this actor or this character, it wouldn't quite have worked. If he was too old, it also probably wouldn't have worked at that time. And so he was the right age to match in, and that's being in the right era, meaning he was born at the right time to actually do this. I also said that he was one of the few bodybuilders. And, there weren't a lot of bodybuilders at that time. Now we can walk anywhere around this area and see lots of bodybuilders, but people didn't look like that back then. And so he was really, really unique in that time. And he was also already had a couple of movies where he had minor roles. So he had some acting experience. All these things tie in together to really support Gladwell's ideas up here. Also, Schwarzenegger's quote here supports and ties into everything, and then I use my thoughts on it to integrate and lock them all together. So this is what I'm looking for, you guys, when I say that your ideas have to tie together, and you can't just say, Gladwell said this, and Schwarzenegger did that, and so therefore that's the right idea. It's not enough. You really have to weave them all together and show how they're connected. So I hope that helps.